Commander Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Stalwart Guardian, watching the stars through the wide viewing window. The ship moved slowly through empty space, far from Earth and any other human colonies. This was the outer rim where few ships dared to travel. Pirates and smugglers used these dark spaces to hide from the law. Dae-ho had been out here for 6 months now, leading patrols to keep the trade routes safe. It was quiet work, but important. Someone had to watch the borders of human space. Someone had to be ready when trouble came. "Commander," called Lieutenant Sojin Park from her station. She was young but good at her job. Her fingers moved quickly over the communication controls. "I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors." Dae-ho walked over to her station. The screen showed wave patterns that looked wrong. They were not like normal radio signals or distress calls. "What is it?" "It's not human, sir," Sojin said. Her voice was careful. "The patterns are too different. But it keeps repeating. Someone is trying very hard to send this message." Other crew members looked up from their work. In all their time in space, they had never found signals from alien life. Humans had looked for other intelligent species for hundreds of years. They had found empty worlds and dead civilizations, but never anyone still alive. "Get Hyewan up here," Dae-ho ordered. Lieutenant Hyewan Lee was their language expert. If anyone could make sense of alien words, it would be her. Hyewan arrived on the bridge within minutes. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who spoke 12 human languages and could learn new ones faster than anyone Dae-ho had ever met. She sat down at Sojin's station and began working with the ship's computer. "The signal is definitely not human," she said after studying the patterns, "but there are mathematical sequences here. Universal concepts. Someone is trying to teach us their language through the message itself." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stopped their work to listen. This was history happening right in front of them. "Can you translate it?" Dae-ho asked. "Give me time," Hyewan said. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. Numbers and symbols filled her screen. "The computer is finding patterns. Building a basic dictionary. This is incredible work, Commander. Whoever sent this message knew exactly how to talk to a species they had never met." Hours passed. Dae-ho sent most of the crew to get rest, but he stayed on the bridge. Sojin remained at her station, keeping the signal strong. Hyewan worked without stopping, only taking water when someone brought it to her. Ki Tae-jung, their tactical officer, came to the bridge with coffee and food. He was a big man who understood weapons and strategy better than anyone else on the ship. "Any luck?" he asked. "We're getting somewhere," Hyewan said. She looked tired but excited. "The language is complex but logical. They use mathematics as the base for everything." "Very elegant, they?" Ki-tae asked. "More than one species?" "No, I think it's one species talking about themselves and others. They mention different groups. Different worlds." Hyewan's eyes went wide as new text appeared on her screen. Oh no, this is terrible. What is it?" Dae-ho moved to look over her shoulder. "It's a distress call," Hyewan said. Her voice was shaking. "They call themselves the Villani Federation. 13 worlds. Peaceful people who never hurt anyone. They're under attack." She kept working, translating more of the message. "The attackers are called the Chromat Empire. They destroy entire planets, strip them of all resources, kill everyone who lives there." The bridge became cold and quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. "How long ago was this sent?" Dae-ho asked. Sojin checked her instruments. "Based on the signal strength and distance, I'd say 3 weeks ago, sir." 3 weeks. Dae-ho felt heavy. "They might already be dead." "No, wait," Hyewan said. She was still translating. "There's more. They say they have maybe 4 weeks left. Maybe 5 if they're lucky. Most of their worlds are already gone. They're asking for help from anyone who might be listening." She turned to face Dae-ho. Tears were in her eyes. "Commander, they're not asking for themselves. They know they're going to die. They're asking someone to save their children, the ones who might still be alive when help comes." Ki-tae studied the tactical information. "Where are they?" 3 weeks away if we push the engines hard," Sojin said. "Maybe a little less if we risk burning out the power systems." "We're one ship," Ki-tae said. "What can we do against an empire that destroys worlds?" Dae-ho walked back to the viewing window. The stars looked the same as always, but now he knew that somewhere out there people were dying. Children were watching their parents get killed. Families were being torn apart by monsters who saw them as nothing but resources to steal. Captain Min Ho Choi's voice came over the ship's communication system. Dae-ho had called him to the bridge as soon as they understood what the message was. What's our situation? The captain asked as he arrived. Deho told him everything. The alien message, the dying civilization, the request for help that probably no one else in the galaxy would answer. Captain Choi listened without speaking. He was an older man who had fought in the border wars against human pirates. He understood what it meant to protect innocent people. How many ships do we have in this sector? He asked Kaite. Maybe 50. Most of them are cargo ships or small patrol vessels like us. And this Chromat Empire? Unknown, sir. But if they can destroy 13 worlds, they have to be powerful. Captain Choi was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. We don't abandon those who cannot defend themselves. That's what makes us human. He turned to Sojin. Send a message on all human frequencies. Any ship that can fight is ordered to meet us at the Vellani border. Full military priority. Sir, Kaite said carefully, we don't know if anyone will come. Then we go alone, the captain said. Set course for Vellani space. Maximum burn. The stalwart Guardian changed direction, its engines roaring to life. Behind them, they left human space and safety. Ahead of them waited an enemy they knew nothing about, fighting for people they had never met. But they were going anyway. Because sometimes being human meant doing the right thing, even when it was impossible. 3 weeks later, Admiral Su Bin-yoon arrived at the meeting point in her massive ship, the Iron Resolve. She expected to find maybe 10 or 20 vessels waiting for her. What she saw instead made her stop and stare. Over 400 ships floated in space around the Vellani border. Big military ships with heavy weapons, small patrol boats with crews of 5 or 6, cargo ships that had been turned into fighting vessels, even civilian craft that looked like they barely held together, but their crews had welded guns to their hulls anyway. How many? She asked her aide, Commander Yunseo Han. 412 ships, Admiral, Yunseo replied. More are still arriving. Subin shook her head in amazement. I sent out a call for military vessels. Half of these ships are civilians. They came anyway, Yunseo said. When they heard about the Vellani children, they came anyway. The Admiral walked to her ship's communication center. She needed to talk to all these captains and find out what they could do against an enemy that destroyed planets. Dr. Wu Jin Nam was already there, studying reports from the different ships. He was their best strategic mind, the man who planned their battles. His face looked worried. What do we have, Doctor? Subin asked. It's not good, Wu Jin said. Most of these ships have light weapons. They're not built for war. The cargo ships have some missiles, but not many. The civilian craft have whatever their crews could buy or steal. He showed her a list on his computer screen. Against normal pirates or raiders, this fleet could do well. But according to the Vellani messages, the Chromat Empire has 800 bioships, living vessels that can repair themselves, technology we don't understand. Bioships? Subin had never heard of such things. Living metal that grows and changes. Weapons that are part of the ship's body. We don't know how to fight something like that. Captain Jinna Ko's voice came over the communication system. She commanded a ship called the Second Chance, which used to carry grain between colonies. Now it had missile tubes welded to its sides. Admiral Yoon, requesting permission to speak for the volunteer fleet. Go ahead, Captain Ko. We've been talking among ourselves, Admiral. We know we're probably going to die out here. These Chromats sound like they're too strong for us. But we didn't come here to win. We came here to fight. Other voices joined in over the communication system. Captains from dozens of ships all saying the same thing. They knew the odds. They knew they might not go home. But they were going to try anyway. Why? Subin asked. Why risk everything for aliens you've never met? Captain Ko was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because they asked for help, Admiral, and because no one else answered. Meanwhile, Taeyang Shin was working on the most important job in the fleet. He led the first contact team, the people whose job was to talk to alien species. For the first time in human history, they were actually going to meet living aliens. It took him 2 days to establish communication with the surviving Vellani leaders. The language was complex, but Hee-Wan Lee had done good work back on the Stalwart Guardian. Her translation program worked well enough for basic conversation. Elder Mulvaney was the voice that came through the speakers. She sounded old and tired, like someone who had seen too much death. You came, she said. Her words were translated by the computer into human language. We sent our message to the stars, but we did not think anyone would come. We're here now, Taeyang said. Tell us about your situation. 10 of our 13 worlds are gone, Mulvaney said. The Chromat stripped them bare. Took everything. Killed everyone. We have 3 worlds left. Maybe 2 million people total. Most of them are children. Tae-young felt sick. What about your military? Your defenses? We had no military, Mulvaney said. We are a peaceful people. We have never fought wars. We tried to negotiate with the Chromat, but they do not talk. They only take. How long do you have? Days, maybe. Their main fleet is coming. We can see it on our sensors. 800 ships, all alive, all hungry. They will finish what they started. Subin listened to this conversation from her command center. Around her, officers prepared for a battle they knew nothing about. Against an enemy they had never seen. With ships that were not built for war, Dr. Nam came to her with more bad news. I've been studying what little information the Villani have about Chromat technology, he said. Their bioships are fast and tough. They can heal from damage. They use energy weapons that drain power from their targets. What about their weaknesses? Unknown. The Villani never hurt one badly enough to find out. They're not fighters, Admiral. They never learned how to hurt anyone. Subin looked out at her fleet. Hundreds of ships, most of them commanded by civilians who had never been in a real battle. They were about to face an enemy that could destroy planets. But we do know how to hurt people, she said quietly. Yes, Admiral. Humans are very good at that. She called her ship captains together for a meeting in virtual space. Their images appeared on screens around her command room. Some wore military uniforms. Others wore civilian clothes. All of them looked determined. The situation is this, she told them. We're outnumbered 2-1. The enemy has better technology and more experience. They've been conquering worlds while we were still learning to fly between stars. She paused, looking at each face. Anyone who wants to leave can go now. No shame in it. This isn't your war. None of the images disappeared. None of the captains said goodbye. Captain Ko spoke for all of them. Where do you want us, Admiral? Subin smiled for the first time in weeks. Form defensive positions around the 3 remaining Villani worlds. Close formation. We'll make them fight for every inch of space. What's the plan? Asked Commander Daeho Kim, whose voice came from the stalwart Guardian. We hold the line, Subin said. We protect those worlds for as long as we can. And when the Chromat come, we show them what happens when someone threatens human children. They're not human children, someone pointed out. Subin's voice became hard as steel. They are now. The fleet spread out across 3 star systems, forming a wall of metal and determination between the Chromat Empire and the last Villani worlds. They didn't have the best ships or the strongest weapons, but they had something the Chromat had never faced before. They had humans who refused to let children die without a fight. Elder Mulvaney watched the human ships take their positions. For the first time in months, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. Why do they do this? She asked Tae-young over their communication link. Why do humans fight for strangers? Tae-young thought about it for a long time. Finally, he said, because someone has to. In the distance, sensors began detecting the approaching Chromat fleet. 800 bioships, each one hungry for death and destruction. Coming to finish what they had started. But this time they would not find helpless victims. This time they would find humans. Captain Donghyun Lim watched his sensors as 3 strange shapes appeared at the edge of the system. The Chromat scouts had arrived, moving faster than any ship he had ever seen. They looked wrong somehow, like they were grown instead of built. All ships, this is Defiant Strike, he said into his communication system. Enemy scouts detected. Moving to intercept. The 3 bioships were beautiful in a terrible way. Their hulls curved and flowed like living skin. Weapons that looked like thorns grew from their sides. They moved through space like sharks swimming through dark water. They're not responding to our warnings, reported Lieutenant So-min Kang from the communication station. I don't think they care about talking. Then we'll have to speak in a language they understand, Dong-hyun said. All weapons target the lead ship. Fire when ready. The Defiant Strike's missiles streaked across space toward the first Chromat scout. The bioship tried to dodge, twisting its body in ways no normal ship could move. But human weapons were fast and accurate. 3 missiles hit the target. What happened next shocked everyone on the bridge. The bioship screamed, not through radio or communication systems. It screamed with its own voice, a sound that came through space itself, a sound of pain and terror that made every human within range feel sick. Did you hear that? So-min asked. Her face was pale. The whole fleet heard it, Dong-hyun said. His hands were shaking. In all his years of fighting pirates and raiders, he had never heard a ship scream before. The wounded scout tried to run, but more human ships moved to surround it. The Second Chance and 2 other vessels fired missiles and laser weapons. Each hit brought more screaming from the bioship. Something dark leaked from the wounds in its hull. Not oil or fuel, but something that looked like blood. "Captain," called Engineer Hansol Park from his station, "I'm reading something impossible. That ship is trying to heal itself. The hull is actually growing back together." But the healing was slow and more human ships were arriving. The Chromat scout fired back with energy weapons that drained power from their targets. The cargo ship's steady progress lost all power and began drifting. But before the bioship could finish it off, missiles from 5 other vessels tore it apart. The scout died with one final scream that made everyone in the system want to cover their ears. "First blood to humanity," Dong-hyun said quietly. The other 2 scouts had been watching. Now they turned and fled, moving faster than any human ship could follow. They disappeared into deep space, carrying news of what had happened back to their empire. Commander Yoo-jin Seo launched her fighter squadron from the carrier Eternal Vigil. 20 small, fast ships designed to attack larger vessels. As they chased the fleeing scouts, she saw something that changed everything. "All ships, this is Dragon Leader," she reported. "The enemy scouts are running. Repeat, the Chromat are retreating." Admiral Subin Yoon's voice came over the communication system from her flagship. "Confirm that report, Commander." "Confirmed, Admiral. They're fleeing the system at maximum speed. I've never seen anything run away so fast." This news spread through the human fleet like fire. The mighty Chromat Empire, destroyer of 13 worlds, was running from one small battle. Their scouts had found something they did not expect. They had found humans. Dr. Woo Jin Nam studied the recordings of the battle on board the Iron Resolve. What he discovered was important beyond measure. "Admiral," he said, "I think we've found their weakness." "What do you mean?" "The bioships. They're alive, which means they can feel pain. Our weapons don't just damage them, they hurt them. Energy weapons just drain power, but kinetic weapons and explosives cause actual agony." Subin looked at the data on his screen. "Are you saying they ran because we hurt them?" "More than that. I think pain is something they've never experienced in battle before. The Villani used energy weapons that the bioships could absorb or deflect. But our missiles and railguns and nuclear warheads actually wound them." Engineer Jae-min Oh had been studying the wreckage of the destroyed scout. Working with Dr. Yoon-soo Park, the fleet's chief scientist, they made an even more important discovery. "The bioships are vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies," Jae-min reported. "When we hit them with the right energy patterns, it disrupts their healing ability and navigation systems." Dr. Park added, "We can modify our weapons to use these frequencies, make every shot more effective against their biotechnology." Subin felt hope for the first time since arriving at the Villani border. "How long do you need?" "Give us 6 hours," Jae-min said. "We can upgrade the weapons on every ship in the fleet." But intelligence officer Sung-ho Lee brought news that killed their celebration. He had been monitoring Chromat communications since the battle. "Admiral, I've decoded some of their transmissions," he said. "The scouts we fought were just the advance guard. The main Chromat fleet is much larger than we thought." "How much larger?" "Not 800 ships. 2,400 bioships. 3 full battle fleets. And they're accelerating toward us. They'll be here in 18 hours. The bridge became very quiet. 2,400 ships against 400. 6-to-1 odds against an enemy they had barely begun to understand. "At least we know we can hurt them," Subin said. "Yes, Admiral. But there are so many of them." Captain Jinako's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, the volunteer fleet is requesting orders." "What kind of orders?" "Whether to run or stay and fight." Subin looked around her bridge. Officers and crew members who had become her family over years of service in space. Good people who deserve to go home to their own families. "All ships," she said into the communication system. "This is Admiral Yoon. In 18 hours, we're going to face an enemy fleet 6 times our size. Anyone who wants to leave should go now. Get out of this system and warn Earth about what's coming." She paused, waiting to see how many ships would abandon the fight. None of them moved. "Admiral," Captain Ko said, "the volunteer fleet votes to stay. We didn't come this far to run away now." Similar reports came from every ship in the fleet. Military vessels and civilian craft all choosing to stay and fight impossible odds. "Why?" Subin asked. "You could go home. See your families again? Because the Villani children don't have families to go home to, Ko replied. Because someone has to make a stand. And because we're human. The next 18 hours passed quickly. Engineers worked without rest to modify weapons and shields. Doctors prepared medical bays for the wounded. Captains wrote letters to families they might never see again. Elder Mulvaney sent one final message to the human fleet. We do not understand why you do this for us, she said. But we will remember. If any of our children survive, they will know that humans came when no one else would. They will know that you fought for them when they could not fight for themselves. Taeyang Shin replied for all humanity. Take care of your children, Elder. We'll try to buy you time to get them to safety. There is nowhere to run, Mulvaney said sadly. This is all the space we have left. Then we hold this space, Taeyang said. We hold it until the last ship falls. Sensors detected the first signs of the approaching Chromat fleet. A massive distortion in space itself like a hole in reality. Through it came shapes that blotted out the stars. 2,400 bioships, each one hungry for destruction. The largest space battle in human history was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what 400 ships could do when they refused to surrender. The Chromat fleet came out of hyperspace like a living nightmare. 2,400 bioships of every size, from small fighters that moved like angry insects to massive command vessels that looked like flying mountains. They blotted out the stars and filled space with their presence. Admiral Su Bin-yoon stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching death approach her fleet. The Chromat ships moved in perfect formation, like a single organism with thousands of parts. They had done this many times before, destroying world after world. All ships, this is Admiral Yoon, she said into the communication system. Remember what we learned. Kinetic weapons work best. Target their weak points, and make every shot count. The first wave of Chromat attackers swept toward the human defensive line. 300 bioships, each one the size of a human destroyer. They moved fast, twisting and turning through space like living creatures. Captain Hae-young Kim watched them approach from the bridge of her converted mining ship, the Broken Chain. Her crew had never been in a real battle before. They were miners and engineers who had volunteered to fight for people they had never met. Steady, everyone, she told her crew. Wait for them to get close. The bioships opened fire first. Energy weapons that looked like lightning reached out to drain power from human ships. But the humans had learned from the scout battle. Their ships were ready now, Hae-young shouted. Missiles and railgun shots filled the space between the two fleets. Human weapons found their targets and the bioships began to scream. The sound of their pain echoed through space, making everyone who heard it feel sick. But this time there were so many enemies that their return fire was overwhelming. The Broken Chain shook as energy weapons hit her hull. Power systems failed. Life support started to shut down. We're losing main power, reported engineer Byung-ho Nam. Hull breach on deck 3. Keep fighting, Hae-young ordered. We hold the line. All across the battlefield, human ships were taking terrible damage. The cargo vessel's steady progress exploded in a ball of fire. The patrol boat Quick Strike broke in half, its crew lost to space. But for every human ship that died, 3 or 4 Chromat bioships screamed their last breath. Lieutenant Colonel Bo Young-an commanded the Marine forces spread throughout the fleet. When damaged Chromat ships drifted close enough, her Marines would board them to gather intelligence and try to capture their technology. What they found inside the bioships was worse than anyone had imagined. Admiral, this is Colonel An, she reported from inside a crippled Chromat vessel. You need to hear this. Go ahead, Colonel. The bioships aren't just alive, Admiral. They're crewed by the minds of people the Chromat have conquered, Villani and other species we don't recognize. Their consciousness has been torn from their bodies and trapped inside these ships. The communication line went quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed this horror. They're slaves, Bo Young continued, forced to pilot ships against their will, tormented and used as living computers. Admiral, some of these minds have been trapped for centuries. Dr. Yoon-soo Park, working frantically in her laboratory aboard the medical frigate Mercy's Light, made a breakthrough that changed everything. Working with captured Chromat technology and Villani survivors, she discovered something incredible. Admiral, I think I can free them, she reported. The trapped minds. I think human medical technology can break the connection and give them peace. How? It's complex, but our neural scanners can disrupt the control systems. We can broadcast the frequency on all channels. Every ship in the fleet can transmit it. Commander Jinwoo Ryu, captain of the Mercy's Light, was already modifying his ship's communication array. We can do it, Admiral, but we need to get close to the enemy ships for it to work. The battle raged around them as human ships began broadcasting the liberation frequency. What happened next shocked everyone on both sides of the fight. Dozens of Chromat bioships suddenly stopped attacking humans and began firing on their own fleet instead. The freed minds inside them had chosen death over continued slavery. They turned their weapons on their former masters, buying precious time for the human fleet. "It's working," Dr. Park shouted over the noise of battle. "We're freeing them!" But the victory came at a terrible cost. The main Chromat fleet had finally reached the battle. Massive command ships that could destroy entire planets began targeting human vessels. The defensive line was breaking under their assault. Captain Soo-Hyun Park commanded the cruiser Unbroken Will. His ship was one of the few real military vessels in the volunteer fleet, armed with heavy weapons and thick armor. But even he was no match for the Chromat command ships that surrounded him. "Captain, we're cut off from the main fleet," reported his tactical officer. "5 enemy command ships have us surrounded." Soo-Hyun looked at his crew. Good people who had followed him into this impossible battle. They deserved better than to die alone in the dark. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "It's been an honor to serve with you." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the liberation frequency to every ship in the fleet. Maximum power. Override all other systems. Sir, that will drain our power reserves. We won't be able to fight." "We won't need to fight," Soo-Hyun said. "Set course for the enemy command ship. Full power to engines." The Unbroken Will accelerated directly toward the largest Chromat vessel, broadcasting the neural disruption frequency with everything it had. All around the battlefield, more bioships began turning against their masters as their enslaved crews were freed. The collision between the Unbroken Will and the Chromat command ship lit up space like a new star. Both vessels died together, but the sacrifice had turned the tide of battle. "All ships concentrate fire on the command vessels," Admiral Yoon ordered. "Target their control systems. Free as many enslaved minds as possible." The strategy worked, but the cost was enormous. Nearly half the human fleet was gone. Brave crews who had volunteered to fight for strangers had given their lives to break chains they never knew existed. Captain Jinna Ko watched the battle from her battered ship, the Second Chance. Her hull was cracked, her weapons were nearly out of ammunition, and half her crew was wounded. But she was still fighting. "Admiral," she called over the communication system, "the volunteer fleet is still with you. We're hurt, but we're not dead yet." Around her, the surviving ships of humanity's first fleet formed up for one last charge. Military vessels and converted civilian craft, all united by the simple belief that some things were worth dying for. The tide of battle had turned, but victory was still uncertain. The Chromat fleet was breaking apart as more and more enslaved minds chose freedom over slavery. Bioships turned on each other in a frenzy of liberation and revenge, but there were still hundreds of enemy vessels, and the human fleet was running out of ships, ammunition, and hope. In the middle of the chaos, Elder Mulvaney sent one final message to the humans who had come to save her people. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten," she said. "Win or lose, the galaxy will know what humans did here today." Admiral Yoon looked around her damaged bridge. Officers and crew members who had become her family, all willing to die for people they had never met. "We're not done yet," she said. "One more push. Give them everything we have left." The surviving human ships charged into the heart of the Chromat fleet, weapons blazing, broadcasting freedom to every enslaved mind they could reach. The largest battle in galactic history was reaching its climax, and no one knew who would survive to tell the story. The silence after battle was strange and heavy. For hours, space had been filled with weapons fire, screaming bioships, and the voices of dying crews. Now there was only quiet and the slow drift of wreckage. Admiral Subin Yoon stood on what remained of her bridge, looking out at a graveyard that stretched across 3 star systems. Broken ships floated everywhere. Some were human vessels that had fought until their last breath. Others were Chromat bioships, finally at peace after centuries of slavery. "Damage report," she said quietly. Commander Yunseo Han, her uniform torn, and her face covered in soot, read from a broken tablet. We started with 412 ships, Admiral. We have 203 left. Most of those are badly damaged. Subin closed her eyes. Over 200 ships lost. Thousands of brave people who had volunteered to fight for strangers. Good people who would never see home again. And the enemy? The Chromat expansion fleet is destroyed, Admiral. We count maybe 50 bioships that escaped into deep space. The rest are dead or have been freed from their slavery. Dr. Wu Jin Nam approached with the final casualty numbers. His face was gray with exhaustion and grief. Admiral, we lost 847 vessels total when you count all the ships that answered our call. Over 50,000 volunteers gave their lives here. The numbers were too big to understand. 50,000 people, 50,000 families who would grieve, 50,000 empty chairs at dinner tables back on Earth and the colonies. But the Villani worlds are safe, Yunseo said. The children survived. Yes, Subin said. The children survived. Captain Jinako's voice came over the communication system from her battered ship, the Second Chance. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Villani leadership. Elder Mulvaney's translated words filled the communication channels. People of humanity, we do not have words in our language for what you have done. You came when we called, though we were strangers. You fought when others would have run. You died so that our children could live. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with tears. The Villani Federation offers humanity membership in the Galactic Council. We offer you our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. We offer you anything we have to give, though it can never repay what you have sacrificed for us. Subin looked around at her surviving officers. These people had been through hell and back. They deserved rewards and recognition for what they had done. But Captain Ko spoke for all of them. Elder Mulvaney, we thank you for your offer, but we didn't come for payment. We came because it was right. Then what do you want? Mulvaney asked. How can we honor your sacrifice? Take care of your children, Ko said simply. Build a good future for them. That's payment enough. Commander Daeho Kim's voice came from the stalwart guardian. Admiral, request permission to establish a permanent listening post in Villani space. We want to help them rebuild. Granted, Subin said. Anyone who wants to stay and help the Villani can do so. Lieutenant Sojin Park volunteered immediately. She had been the first to hear the alien distress call, and she wanted to help teach human languages to Villani children. Hundreds of other crew members made the same choice. Dr. Yunsu Park had a different mission. She worked with the freed bioships, helping the liberated minds find peace after centuries of slavery. Many chose to die rather than live with their memories. Others asked to be given new bodies to have a chance at life again. We discovered something important here, she reported to Subin. The Chromat Empire is not one species. It's dozens of conquered peoples, all enslaved and forced to fight. We didn't just defeat an enemy, Admiral. We started a revolution. Intelligence reports confirmed her words. Across Chromat space, enslaved species were rising up against their masters. The liberation frequency that had been broadcast during the battle was being passed from world to world. The empire was falling apart as its slaves chose freedom over bondage. But the most important changes were happening in other parts of the galaxy. News of the battle spread faster than light through communication networks and trade routes. Other species began to take notice of these newcomers called humans. Ambassador Yoon, no relation to the Admiral, sent reports from the Galactic Council. The word human is becoming synonymous with those who answer the call, she wrote. 3 other species have requested our help with their own problems. They want to know if humans will come when people are in trouble. Will we? Subin asked her staff. Yes, said every voice in the room at once. The memorial service was held in space, between the 3 surviving Villani worlds. 200 human ships formed a circle around a monument made from pieces of destroyed vessels. The names of every lost ship were read aloud along with the names of their crews. Elder Mulvaney spoke for her people. Today we say goodbye to heroes we never met who died for children they never saw. Their names will be taught to every Villani child for as long as our species exists. Captain Coe, speaking for the survivors, was simple and direct. They died as they lived, doing the right thing. The memorial ended with a single transmission sent toward Earth and the human colonies, a list of the dead, and a message that their sacrifice had meaning. That somewhere in the galaxy, alien children were learning to say human names with gratitude. But the story was not over. Even as the memorial service ended, new distress calls were being received by human listening posts. The Zilanian Republic was under attack by robot swarms. The peaceful traders of the Antares sector were being hunted by cosmic pirates. The collective of small worlds was facing plague and starvation. All of them had heard what happened at the Villani border. All of them sent the same message. Please, humans, can you help us too? Subin looked at the surviving ships of her fleet, damaged vessels with tired crews who had already given more than anyone had a right to ask. Orders, Admiral? Commander Han asked. We just got word that the new memorial fleet is ready, Subin said. Fresh ships, new crews, all volunteers. They can take the next mission. She paused, looking at the stars where so many good people had died. But first, we go home. We rest. We mourn our dead. And we remember why we do this. Why do we do this, Admiral? Asked a young officer who had just joined her crew. Subin smiled for the first time in weeks. Because someone has to. Because when people are in trouble, humans answer the call. The surviving ships of the first volunteer fleet began their journey home to Earth and the colonies. Behind them, they left 3 worlds full of living children who would grow up free because strangers had cared enough to fight for them. And ahead of them, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other voices were calling for help. Humans would answer those calls too. They always did. Because in a galaxy full of species who looked the other way when others suffered, humans had made a choice. They would be the ones who came when no one else would. They would be the ones who fought for people they had never met, simply because it was right. The galaxy was learning what it meant to have humans as neighbors, and the universe would never be the same.